Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh. With me today, as always, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel. How you guys doing?
We're good.
Good. How you doing?
Great here, guys. I'm doing good, as always.
Wonderful.
Good. And who do we have today?
Well, this guest we have today, folks, well, he is a broadcast veteran. He's a part of the voiceover, script writing, and narration industries. The most known work that he's done, he is the voice of Boris, aka the dad, for a Canadian educational children's series, Caillou. Here he is, Mr. Pat Fry. Happy to have you here, Pat. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. It's nice to be here. Because I heard somebody
Awesome.
once say, at my age, it's nice to be anywhere.
Great to have you here, Pat.
Well, it's nice to be here. Did you ever watch Caillou?
Oh,
I did, yes.
Oh, of
Yes, we
course.
did.
Of course I
In the-
did.
In
I
the
did.
background, I have the holiday movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Well, that was one of my favorite things to do because I got to do 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. I got
That's
to do
right,
Yeah.
yes.
that.
Yes.
And I had done it myself years before and put it on Facebook because it's a great poem. And,
Yes.
you hear so many different versions of that poem used for advertising, for comedy, parody, even politics. And I just
Yeah.
thought, you know what, I like to hear a poem like that every once in a while, done the way the author intended it to be performed, if it's going to be performed. And so I went ahead and recorded it, and I put graphics of old Christmas cards and things like that, and I put it up on Facebook or on YouTube, actually, to be more accurate, YouTube. And I think it's still there. And then they came along, and it was part of this film about Christmas that Caillou was doing. So the only difference being, instead of saying "'twas the night before Christmas and all through the house," it was Boris. "'Twas the night before Christmas and all through the house." And so I did the whole thing, but I did it in 2 takes. That's me this time. Goodbye. And I did it in 2 takes, which you have to do at least 2 takes of everything, because I think that I had spent so much time on the video that I made, and so it was a great thing. So Caillou's Christmas movie. I was in the movies.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Great to have you here. So to kick things off, we know who you are, but for those who don't, would you care to introduce yourself a little bit? Yeah.
So who am I and what do I do? Well, I was born in Thunder Bay, which is kind of a cool thing to be able to say. You ever heard of it?
Yeah.
It's in
think so.
on Lake Superior, up
Mhm.
towards, as you're heading west in Canada. It used to be called Fort William, and that's what it was called when I was born. And but my family moved closer to Montreal, in a small town in Ontario called Cornwall, and I was raised right around there. And in grade 1, the one skill that I had was I was very good at reading aloud and loud enough to be heard in the back of the classroom. And it propelled me to be the top of my class in grade 1 at that. I was useless at everything else, but I could do that. So it seemed like, doing that sort of thing was my future. And so I let that carry me through school. And then in high school, I got involved in theater and did some interesting stuff there. And then I got into radio at the age of about 18. It was the summer of 74, July 4th, actually, which would be the American Independence Day celebrations in 74. And so I got into radio, started with the overnight show and moved my way up that way, traveled across Canada, did some more theater, lots of radio. And ended up, I married my wife in 76, the American bicentennial. And we traveled together across Canada for several years, working in radio and doing all kinds of interesting stuff. And eventually settled in Ottawa, where I lived for 30 years. That's, of course, the capital of Canada, and very approximate to Montreal. Now, my oldest son, his name is AJ. It's actually spelled AJAY. When he was about 8 years or 9 years old, was cast in Little Lulu and Arthur, both. And
Wow.
So I would drive him from Ottawa to Montreal to record those shows. And I started to pester the talent coordinator to let me have an audition for something. And so eventually he did. I played a kind of a trick on him, and it worked. And I got an audition for Caillou and nailed it the first time out of the box. So I can tell you a little story about how that was done if you're interested to know
Yeah, of
about
course.
that.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
of course.
first, what I did was I had been in radio, and back in the early to mid 90s, we still used audio cassettes to promote our voice talents. And the talent coordinator in Montreal, a lovely fellow by the name of Andy Grin, he had a big collection of radio station and TV station coffee mugs, which
Oh, wow.
I had a collection of those too, but only because I'd worked in radio and television in my career up to that point. I didn't really care about them particularly. They were just things that I drank coffee out of. So each time I would take my son to work on Arthur or Little Lulu, I brought Andy a mug as a gift. So here, Andy, here, add this one to your collection. Then the next time, add this one. And about the fourth time I brought him the mug, I put the cassette of my demo in it. Now, they had a rule that parents were not supposed to work on, they were supposed to be stage dads or stage moms, and we didn't even get to go in the studios or watch them work. We had to sit out in the lobby area where the chairs were and just wait. Except once in a while they pulled me in if they needed a voice for something. For Arthur, there's a few times that I appear in the background. I remember specifically I was a banker once, and I had to make sort of a sound. Another time I had to do play-by-play in a hockey game that was playing in the background. He's going up the ice, got the puck, he scores! Something like that. But they couldn't pay me because I wasn't in the union. So they paid extra to AJ, and then I could take the money if I had wanted to. I never did. But so Andy gets this mug, and there's a cassette in it, and he looks in the mug, and he kind of rolls his eyes, and he goes, well, I'll see what I can do. And I guess he might have listened to it. So sure enough, he calls me and says that they're making this new cartoon called Caillou, and they need a dad, and I'd be welcome to audition. Now, at that point in my career, I had been spending a lot of time narrating e-learning courses. Are you familiar with what those are?
Mm-hmm.
Those are courses you take on the computer that come with narration.
Okay.
So you might, at the same time that you're taking the course, if you have the narration on, you might hear somebody say, now take tab A and insert it into slot B. That's it. I mean, it's a job for guys who are looking for work as voiceover, and there's still an enormous voiceover industry for e-learning today. I'm still working at it over 20-30 years later.
Wow.
So I had done that. I did the audition, and Andy walked me out of the audition. He put his arm around me and he said, Pat, you tried really hard on that, but I think maybe you've been doing a little too much e-learning stuff, so don't get your hopes up. Well, apparently what the process was that they had 3 people who listened to the auditions. They each had a clipboard. And the idea was they would write down on the clipboard the number of the person that they thought sounded good. After the first round of listening, they would compare notes, and the people whose numbers showed up on all of the clipboards, they would listen to a second time. But as it turned out, mine was the only number that showed up on all three clipboards the first time. So I was hired. That was it. So,
Wow.
you know, lucky me, I had nailed what was a real career
gosh.
changer. Now, what are the reasons for that? This is just fluke luck. But where I lived in Ottawa, right across the Ottawa River is the town. It used to be called Hull, Quebec. Now it's Gatineau. And they had a thriving production community. And when we first moved to Ottawa, I made it a point to go over to Gatineau or Hull and get jobs, get work with the French production companies who needed to have an English contact who could do, for example, if they made a French TV commercial, but they wanted to put it on English TV, they needed a voice in English who could do the commercial, and also corporate videos, that sort of thing. They all knew who Caillou was because Caillou had been popular on French television and in French books for years. So when I went back to them and told them I was now Caillou's dad, they were thrilled. They, you know, wow, you're Papa Caillou. They called me Papa Caillou after that. And it really helped my career in that area as Caillou's dad, not to mention the fact that Caillou lasted for several years. I was in about 250 of the cartoons, and which, although it's not a lot, every once in a while I get a friendly reminder in the mail that I love to cash. And you know, that's been a good thing. That's for sure. My son AJ also, he appeared in one of the episodes. I don't know if you ever would remember that they went to a this would be a space emporium where you could go in and look at the stars on the ceiling. And
I think so. Yeah. I remember that.
And AJ was the tour guide in that particular episode. He provided the voice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
He and I have worked together on a number of projects, and he works for me still, doing e-learning, voiceover, and other things. He went on to host a very popular television program in Canada for almost 10 years. It was called Inner Space, and it was all about the genre of, you know, comic books and video games and Dungeons and Dragons stuff, all of that sort of thing, all the latest movie releases. He interviewed Steven Spielberg, and he, you know, he called me once. He was on a beach in California. I think it was there. He had just interviewed Daniel Craig a few minutes before. They always send him to Las Vegas to the big shows and such. So he had a great life. I mean, he still is. I just watched him playing an FBI sort of a henchman in an episode of Accused just the other night. He's about he's going on 40 now. But so he and I worked together quite a lot. But that's how I ended up getting Caillou. Was that little trick, putting the cassette in the mug. That was the idea. So I mentioned, I think to Chris, that I've just completed a book.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's basically stories like that that I've written about. There are many of them. All not. I mean, Caillou is, you know, I suppose 3 or 4 pages in that book, but there are so many things that have gone on that the book is not published yet. It's called Media Me, and it's really intended as a suggested reading for persons who would be taking any kind of media course, who want to get into the media as a career. Just something they could read to give them an idea what a media career might be like. I only just finished it. We haven't even got a publisher yet. However, it's been read by several people, one of whom is a big shot in Canadian media. He'd never call himself that, nor I really shouldn't either. but he wants to acquire the rights to shop my book around as a TV series.
Ooh.
I know.
Wow.
Ooh.
Oh
What?
my
Oh,
gosh.
that's
It's
cool.
not even
That's
published
crazy.
yet. It's like
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for some
What?
people I sent it to get back to me whether they liked it or not. But so I don't know what to make of that. But I know this guy very, very well. I know he's well connected. I know he's credible. He's the real thing. The fact is, I did mention him in my book because when I was in grade 2, 7 years old, and he was in grade 1, 6 years old, we used to hang out together in the schoolyard talking about doing plays and being in the movies and being in television. And he went on to become the artistic director of the Shaw Festival in Canada, among other things, and many things. And I got into radio, and I've been in some films and some television series and such. So we both realized our dreams, only he's far more powerful than I am in the industry. I'm a softie, you know. My biggest job in life was being the best dad I could be and the best hubby. That's just the truth of it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
My wife and I have been together for, well, we started to go steady in 1972. So you do the math. But
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
that
Oh.
makes it 50 years. And
Yeah.
That's great.
That's
it
awesome.
is.
It's wonderful.
It's the greatest blessing of my life, really.
Oh,
Is that. So
that's
never really felt that I had to get rich. Never did. My life
Right.
was rich enough.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
are you interested in? Are you aware that I was in some films, one kind of genre-ish?
Yeah,
That's
I saw
Yeah.
one of your reels and saw like bits and pieces of some of the films you've done.
yeah. This
Mhm.
was what's it called? War Zone or Punisher War Zone. The Punisher. That was shot in Montreal, and I get killed. I get eviscerated by a bad guy in that movie. I had some small parts in some other ones. I've actually worked with 2 Academy Award-winning directors in my life. Once in a film called Stardom. The director was Denis Arcand, who was a Canadian who had won an Academy Award for Best Foreign Film.
Wow.
And the other director, I don't recall his name. He had won the Best Animated Short Academy Award, and he directed a commercial of Santa Claus for Coca-Cola, and it was
Oh, okay.
animated. And they hired me to be the body double for Santa. I weighed 100 pounds more most of my life. I just in the last year I've lost 100 pounds. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a good thing. It makes an amazing difference in your life. And none of you guys look like you need to lose an ounce, so that's all right.
Yeah.
Stay that way. I highly recommend it. So
Yeah.
although I did make some money, not much, but because of the weight thing,
Hmm.
they're always looking for the next Oliver Hardy.
Definitely. So I'm kind of curious. So before becoming an actor yourself, did you have like any favorite TV shows or movies to watch?
Well, yeah, I enjoyed. First of all, I liked Lassie.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Lassie, yeah.
Yes.
they used to have Timmy and June Lockhart played the mom, and
Hmm.
I used to watch that show, and I would think, gosh, that kid's about my age, and he's having a great time, and I think I could do that. That looks like so much fun. It must be a great way to make a living or to have fun. So I liked that show. But I also liked corny things too, like F Troop. I don't know if you remember that show.
I think
It was
so,
about
yeah, it rings a bell.
cavalry out in the. Then there was Beverly Hillbillies. I absolutely would watch that every time. And to name a couple, I used to like the superhero. I loved My Favorite Martian.
Yes.
That was that was one of my absolute favorites to watch. Bewitched, anything that had supernatural stuff in it where you could imagine yourself doing magic. That was lots of fun for me as a kid. And but nowadays, most of the time, it's my favorite programming is British murder mystery drama. I watch as much of that as I can. I don't know why. My wife and I enjoy that together. We watch it together, and I watch sort of weird off the wall stuff. Like I never miss an episode of Ancient Aliens, not because I believe everything that they say, but there's a lot of really interesting archaeological stuff in it. I'm a sucker for archaeology stuff and science, how the universe works, that sort of thing. Sci-fi, Star Trek, Star Wars movies, seen every one, The Mandalorian, all of those, and I keep an open mind. A lot of people are critical about that stuff, but I just want to watch it and enjoy it. They're the guys who own the right to tell the story. So tell me the story. I'll just sit and listen and enjoy it. Follow along. I'm not too picky or finicky on that. I just want to be entertained. So that's it. But yeah, I like a good broad variety of things. Life is an amazing thing. It offers so many options, so many choices. It's a good idea to try to sample as many as you can. I think, as far as we know, we're only here once, right? As far as
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's good to experiment a little bit, and I've watched really all kinds of things. I love musicals, anything, almost. I'm not a big fan of the Survivor kind of competitions or
Yeah,
things
me
like
neither.
that.
It's not really something I could ever get into.
I used to be big on Big Brother, but not anymore.
I used to be like
honestly
into those type of shows, but I just kind of lost interest.
Not as much as I used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Interests change over time.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
I know that one of you are in Massachusetts and the other guys are in Maryland, but I'll tell you that any opportunity I get to watch Yankee baseball, that's another of my things.
Yes. Yes, I do love baseball. Watching sports.
Yep.
Yeah, hockey, of course, too, up here in Canada.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Hockey's big in Canada.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather used to have season tickets right behind the penalty box at the Forum in Montreal back in the 30s and 40s.
Oh wow.
And so it was like a religion to my family to be Canadiens fans. My mother was from Montreal. My father was from Britain. He came over during the war, Second World War. He was an airman, and he had to pick up airplanes in Montreal and fly them back across to Europe and North Africa. That was his gig. And while in Montreal, he met a very pretty girl who was playing the records and doing the announcing at the Officers Club. So I guess you'd say she was kind of a disc jockey. So in a sense, I took after my mother career-wise and became one of those. But anyhow, my father he didn't know anything about hockey when he arrived. But boy, could he ever play soccer. Being from Britain. Pardon me while I take a swig.
That's okay.
No worries.
That's okay.
So what else about Caillou would you like to know? If there's anything I can tell you there. I can tell you a funny story. This is
sure.
One of the things about doing Caillou was, of course, I had to do Caillou's voice and read script. And as I said, I'd been able to do that sort of thing since grade 1. I'd led the way. You may have an experience like this where your teacher had a sore throat or didn't want to read the story after lunch before the school started again, and she'd hand it off to a student. I was the guy they always gave it to. You have to forgive me. I've lost my train of thought. I was going to tell you a story about, don't remember. It's gone. I use a word here. Senility. It's just gone. There was a story I was going to tell you there.
Well, maybe as we go on talking about Caillou, maybe it'll jog your memory.
Yeah,
But
maybe it'll
Oh,
come back.
Probably.
there it is. Okay, so
Ah,
Yeah.
Caillou, they put out a record, like a song CD.
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's right.
mhm.
Okay, well, I get a call. They want me to show up at a studio in Montreal at a certain date at a certain time, and I'm going to have to sing a song. And when I was in school, I couldn't sing a thing. I had been cast in a musical when I was in grade 9. Musical was Bye Bye Birdie. I couldn't sing. The musical director at the time said, "Man, you are tone deaf." I could speak out loud. I could do presentations, voices, comedy, all of that. Couldn't sing. So I'm going to this recording session in Montreal, extremely nervous. I don't even know what I'm supposed to sing. So I get there, and the music director is there, and he says, "So did you get the music? Did you get the recording we sent you?" And I said, "No, but was I supposed to receive a recording?" And, "Yeah, of course. You didn't get that? No, why didn't they send this guy? Why didn't this guy get a recording?" Doesn't matter anyway, but I did the best I could. I swallowed my shyness, my nervousness, and belted it out as best as I could, and got paid, and waited several months for the Caillou music CD to come out. There was, I think, one song, maybe two, that Dad was on. So eagerly get the DVD or the CD, pop it in the CD player, and listen to my song, and instantly realize that the music director himself had covered my voice. I wasn't there. My name was on it, but it's not me. So if you ever hear the Caillou music CD, that's not me singing. I can guarantee you of that.
That's a bit strange.
Yeah.
Well, what would you do? I mean, I was probably off key and lacking any confidence, and everybody else was really good. Now, instead of when I was in Bye Bye Birdie in grade 9, and I couldn't sing, we turned that into a comedy opportunity. So I would walk out and do my little singing bit, intentionally off key, intentionally comedic, to cover for the fact that I couldn't sing, so we could get a laugh. But you can't do that with Caillou, really. Not that kind of a product. So I didn't resent the fact that they had done that. I found it to be kind of amusing and funny, and I think it's a hoot, actually, that they did that. So that was just one of the Caillou stories that we have.
Yeah,
The tragic one of Jaclyn Linetsky. Are you familiar with her?
yeah,
Yeah.
she was, I think, the second voice of Caillou.
She was the second, and she was a very lovely girl, and came from an extremely loving family, and that was a great tragedy to lose her. Not just to lose her for Caillou, but it's tragic that she was just it was very heartbreaking at the time. Now, shortly after that, when we started recording Caillou, the first couple of seasons, we did it as an ensemble. Everybody in the studio together at their own microphone, but all together, where we could relate to each other. Then, after Jackie passed away, we would go in individually, and I would record. I'd drive up to Montreal, record my lines, and then they'd record their own separately, and then they cut them all together and put them in. And then by the time it ended, they didn't even have me go to Montreal. I would go to a studio in Ottawa, and the director would be in Toronto, and the producer would be in Montreal, and we'd all be hooked up, and I'd do my voice there. I didn't have to travel, which was really very nice.
Wow.
And that's as close as I got. But so, there's a bit of a backstory. Have you ever heard of a Canadian kids TV show called Mr. Dress Up?
I don't think so.
It was hosted by a man named Ernie Coombs, who went by the name Mr. Dress Up, and it was a show for young children about the same age as those who would watch Caillou. There was also a show in Canada for many years called The Friendly Giant, and that was hosted by a man named Bob Hum. That was on. It was so long ago that I watched it as a child, And it was the first gig that I ever wanted, because even as a 5-year-old, I knew that this man had to retire sometime. And I wanted to be the friendly giant. I wanted to do children's programming. And I kept that in the back of my mind for quite a long time. Now, fast forward to about 1982, and I'm in Lethbridge, Alberta, in a play, Midsummer Night's Dream, the Shakespeare play. I was playing Puck. And so I'm in full costume, and it's dress rehearsal day. But Ernie Coombs, who is Mr. Dress Up, now the big Canadian toddlers TV show, I just bump into him underneath the stage at the dressing rooms, and we have this wonderful conversation. Me, all in total costume as Puck, and I told him how much I wanted to get into children's programming, and so again, 1982, and he said, "Listen, if you're ever in Toronto, you should come to one of our shooting days at the studio." Now that could be idle talk, but he said, if you come to Toronto, and he gave him the coordinates, the man's name I should call, and he said, do it. Well, as it turns out, we put the play on at the University of Lethbridge. Some professional people took me aside and they said, look, you really don't need to be in university. You should be acting professionally now. And I'd only just started. I only started university. Well, the audition for Midsummer Night's Dream was the first day of university. That was my first day of university. So now it's like the end of October, and I have to go to my coordinator, my educational coordinator, who happens to be the director of the play, and say to him, listen, these people are telling me I should be a professional actor right now, and that I don't really be, I don't need to be at university. What should I do? And he said, well, I have to tell you in all honesty that if you want to be an actor, I see no difference between you and a fourth-year graduate right now. However, if you want an education, you should stay in university. And I said, okay, thank you for that advice. And then he said, but I think that the assistant director can probably be more helpful to you. So I went to see the assistant director of the play. She was married to the guy who was the stage manager of the play, and they were from Toronto and had been out in Lethbridge, Alberta, working to make money. Theater people need to find gigs. And They said that they had subleased their fully furnished 3-bedroom apartment in downtown Toronto to some actors who had just skipped out on the rent. Would you be interested in a fully furnished 3-bedroom apartment in downtown Toronto by any chance? And I said, hell yeah. So besides, psychology 101 wasn't really, turning out to be as interesting as I thought it might be. So we piled everything into the car and hightailed it across to Toronto, where I started to take acting lessons from a man who he ended up being the smoking man in the X-Files. Any of you ever watched the X-Files?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit of it, yeah.
There was a smoking man who was kind of an FBI agent.
Okay.
William Davis was his name. And he was my acting teacher. And he was very enthusiastic about my skills. So anyhow, I'm not sure where that story began, but all of that will be in my book.
Nice.
Yay.
Nice.
Fantastic. So taking a step back a little bit, I guess you kind of mentioned it. Do you remember what your first acting jobs were?
Paid ones or just acting?
I guess professional.
Yeah.
Professional.
Yeah.
All right, let me think on that. Acting and getting paid. Well, possibly, I imagine I did some extras work, or I might have had a line or two in the Ottawa production community. They used to make a lot of sort of movie of the week kind of stuff. Now they're an absolute hotbed for these Hallmark romance movies. That's all in Ottawa. Of course, we moved out of Ottawa about 7 years ago, so I've been missing all those gigs. I had been in a TV commercial. I think it would have been in northern British Columbia when I was working in radio up there. I was hired to be a guy eating a slice of pizza in a commercial. I probably got paid $50, but it felt good, as I think that might have been my actual first on-camera paid job, was that. And so then, probably a few of these little movies and things in the Ottawa area. I was once paid, I think it was around $600 to entertain about 8 or 10 people at a dinner party who were introducing a new kind of Mercedes-Benz car in Ottawa. And I was just told to go and entertain them. And so I decided to impersonate our prime minister of the time. His name was Jean Chrétien. And he talked with a really French accent, eh? And so I went to see these people and tell them a bunch of jokes about Canada and politics in Canada. But now I was very overweight and I wore a Hawaiian shirt and blue jeans. I did not try to look like the prime minister. But so that was fun to do. I, paid a few $100s. So I had little gigs like that, but there was nothing before Caillou. There was nothing, really too significant. The Shakespearean play was a university play. It was not a paid gig. And but in Toronto, AJ was born in Toronto, our firstborn. And then we ran out of money. And I was offered a job as an afternoon drive announcer on an FM rock station in Halifax.
Oh, wow.
Right when we ran out of money. And so I took it. And we lived in Halifax for a while. And I shifted from on air into commercial writing, running the creative department. And I haven't been on the air as an announcer ever since. So I really got more into writing. And performing and
nice.
That sort of thing.
Nice.
Awesome. So I know the Caillou fans are probably kind of wondering about this, but can we hear a bit of Boris?
You could. Let's see if I might have a script for something I could read here. Oh
wow.
This is a poem. The last poem I just wrote. This is probably a couple of weeks old. And let's see if I can do it as Boris. It's called My Weakest Poetry. The weakest poetry I've ever written, I've assembled too fast. The first thoughts that came to me should have come last. The emotions that inspire the words from my soul arrive jumbled and tangled, and I fall short of my goal. I work them and retool them and make sure they're rhyming, always conscious of the fact that it's all about timing. The theme to my verse, assembled to entertain, lands as a supper plate ort from a crusty old brain. Yet, when I pull the sheet and read it aloud, at first I'm impressed and I truly feel proud. Then I read it again to find I'm not as sure as I was. This poem now seems weak to me, and I think it's because the weakest poetry I've ever written has been assembled too fast. The first thoughts that came to me should have come last. You like my poem?
Yes.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Well, I write one or two every week or two. Some of them are better than others. That's one of my weakest. I wrote a poem about weak poetry. I try to keep a sense of humor in my life,
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
It's good to
I
do that.
concluded a long time ago that, you get one. And I just don't let myself get bogged down in, maybe people think I'm being naive, but I'll give you an example. I have a niece, very, very activist niece. And she called me, a year or so ago at the height of a lot of this political tension. And she said, I heard a rumor that you support President Trump. And I said, what? Like, I'll have to know, do you support President Trump? I said, well, first of all, I don't generally discuss politics. Second, I don't think President Trump needs my support. And third, I'm a Canadian. I can't vote for him anyway. So, I don't have, like, I don't even know what this is about. But it's people like that, the politically, excessive, that have driven me to ground to where I say, you know what, life is too short. I'll vote. I vote in my election. But another example, I have another nephew who runs a politically oriented podcast, and on Facebook the other day, he posted something about his MP voting for something that our prime minister is pushing, and I don't even know what it was. And now, in the riding that I'm in, our representative, his name is Tony Baldinelli. That's Baldinelli. And he's absolutely as bald as a cue ball. And I always thought that was kind of funny. So what I wrote back to my nephew about this was, I don't know how my MP is voting on these things. His name is Tony Baldinelli, and he's as bald as a cue ball. When he was in high school, his name was Tony Mullitinelli. He had to think about that. But that's my attitude. I'll just make a joke about it. I'm more like, I guess, Chris Rock than Will Smith.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
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 Oh my goodness.
So do you have any favorite episodes of Caillou?
Well, the one that my son and I were in together a bit, I suppose comes to mind. But they really weren't aimed at me, content-wise.
Right.
And I liked any one of them that came with a union paycheck. So it made a big difference in our lives. The first house we bought, we used to refer to it as the house that Caillou bought because, with that income, it changed our lives, really. It pays very well to do that sort of thing, and there's not a lot of effort. But no, I honestly don't. I have a whole box full of actual scripts still that I keep from the show.
That's cool.
My notes are in them.
Oh.
I don't know that they have any collectible value at all for anyone, but they're there. The Christmas one I know for sure is in the box.
The
The
Caillou's holiday movie.
Hmm?
Yeah. Yeah, it was called Caillou's holiday movie.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
It's awesome.
It did make a big difference. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So now on the subject of the holiday movie, I know we brought it up at the beginning, but what was it like recording? Get in and do a Christmas special for Caillou.
Well, it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I can tell.
Obviously, you get into the Christmas spirit. Of course, it's probably July or something when you record it. But the thing that really made it sing for me was the opportunity to do "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" as Caillou's dad, and because I thought that might have some staying power, because the movie still is aired some places around Christmas season.
Yeah,
it's nice. But I had I've played Santa Claus a number of times, and in Canada for a period of 5 years or so, between about 2014 and 2019 or so, up here at Canada Post, and I don't know what it's like in the States, but in Canada, they use volunteer contributions of labor from their staff, the Canada Post staff, to process letters to Santa Claus from Canadian children, and they'll send an answer back to everyone. So they made this very expensive commercial at a beautiful log resort, this beautiful resort in Quebec made of logs. And so they had me play Santa Claus. And so I had
I could
the
tell,
beard alone.
I can hear a little bit of you when you do that. So
Well, the beard alone cost $3,000 to have custom made.
Wow.
And I mean, this was a big budget
What?
commercial. And for 5 years in Canada, every Christmas season, I was the guy who was on camera as Santa Claus. Now, I didn't say anything. They used someone else as the voiceover. It's some guy saying, "Hey, this is where you send your letters to Santa Claus, and we'll send a letter back to you." That sort of thing. But it wasn't my voice. I was just Santa. And that was really one of the more memorable things that I've done in my career, particularly because of I had just been in a film prior to that called September Runs Red, and it was a psychological thriller. And I played an autistic man, except that I wasn't really autistic. I was a doctor pretending to be autistic so as to set up a situation for I guess you'd call him the villainous doctor. And so that was the material that the director of the Santa Claus commercial had sent to his clients when he said, "I want this guy to be Santa Claus." And they looked at me as this autistic guy. And on my website at patfry.com, you can see some of this stuff, patfry.com. And you'll see the Santa Claus thing, and you'll also see me in a segment from this movie as the autistic man. Well, Canada Post said, "He's very scary. You can't really mean he's going to be Santa Claus." And the director said, "No, he'll be fine. He'll make a great Santa Claus." And, I think I did. Everybody who saw it seemed to like it. I'd leave that up to you,
Exactly.
But it was, I always enjoyed that. Then I played Santa Claus. Now, another big project I've done recently, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is an online series called the Paper Puppet Playhouse. Any of you ever heard of it?
I don't think so.
It's basically, they took old traditional nursery rhymes like Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill and the Three Little Pigs and Little Red Riding Hood, and sort of retold them in sort of a modern, kind of sassy way without being offensive towards small children, because that's still who it was aimed at.
Right.
And I got to do all of the voices in this series, all of the character voices.
Oh, wow.
And
cool.
Again, that led to me being Santa Claus in 2 other cartoon series that were made by the producers of the Paper Puppet Playhouse. So I've done a lot of Santa, and these other, doing the nursery rhymes was so much fun to do because I got to do all of the voices. Finally, after I had been cast as Caillou's dad, I had been offered the opportunity to do all of the voices in another cartoon series that was going to be called Peter Piper and the Plain People. And I would be the character. The main character was going to be the signal tower at the airport. And this signal tower, he would tell stories about like a Piper airplane and its adventures. And I was going to be the teller of the story, and then I would do all of the various other characters as well. And then someone else, I think it might have been one of the royal family from Britain, produced a cartoon series about a Piper airplane, and so that they beat us to it. Mine was canceled. Darn, that would have been so much fun. So then later, about 6-7 years ago, I was cast to do this Paper Puppet Playhouse. Now, why is it that Peter Piper and the Plain People became the Paper Puppet Playhouse? Everything starting with the letter P. But there you go. I took it. That was as much fun, really, in many ways, as Caillou was. Of course, Caillou, I was always Boris, and Boris was always this wholesome, happy, wonderful dad.
Yes.
Now, I took it seriously. At the time, if you wanted to look at cartoon dads, you had Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, and other goofballs. And I thought Caillou's dad gave me an opportunity through Boris to try to impart to some young people what a dad should really be, what my dad was. You know, that a wholesome, he cares first about his kids, he's there. You know, he helps out with the stuff around the house. I believe very strongly in that sort of thing, and I totally loved the fact that as Caillou's dad, I could at least try to impart some of that wholesomeness, an alternate take on what a dad should be. Because if you think of it, if you're 6 or 7 years old and your introduction to what a dad is, particularly because there are so many father absent homes today, so you're looking at television and Homer Simpson is going to tell you what a dad is supposed to be, or worse yet, Peter Griffin is going to tell you what a dad is supposed to be. And there are others. When I was a child, of course, the one that I never liked Fred Flintstone. I liked Barney. Barney was okay, but I never liked Fred Flintstone at all. I thought he was a big, loud-mouthed bully, and I never liked him. So when I got to be Caillou's dad, I didn't have to be that. I could be, you know, what I tried to be to my own kids. And, you know, that's worked out all right. That's worked out all right. I have a son who's in Kelowna, British Columbia. He's you know, he's in the high tech field and doing all right out there, and has a lovely lady. And and AJ's still in Toronto, and as I say, still acting around, doing voiceover work and stuff like that.
Awesome.
So, this is good. Okay, this is very interesting. So, besides your own, do you have a favorite Caillou character?
Well, I liked Caillou, you know, and Boris liked Doris.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, I think I would have to say, you know, I was happy to meet Caillou, and you know, I thought most of my interactions were with Caillou. So you know, there a lot of the other characters were kind of transient, you know, but I have to be honest, after I voiced them, there's a lot of them I probably never even watched, you know.
Right.
You know, it's not like I'm gonna sit down and watch some Caillou now. Well, of course I would tune in if it was on, I'd watch it.
Right.
And it made me a bit of a celebrity in my own extended family, you know. But not as much as AJ, my son. He always was a bigger star than me, just because of his character and what a wonderful kid he was. My son was Caillou in many ways.
So
yeah, Gilbert is
Gilbert's
awesome too.
Gilbert's a funny character.
Oh yeah, well that's true. You know, Rosie could be cute at times too.
Yeah.
Little things.
And then like Gilbert doing some funny stuff, and then Kai would be like, Gilbert.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Gilbert something.
So now recently, and we talked about this briefly when I first booked you, but so recently Caillou's been revived. What are your thoughts on it making a comeback?
Well, I think it's probably a good thing. It's kind of inevitable. Everything, you know, goes around, comes around, as they say. It would have been nice if they had given me a call and said, "Hey, you want to do that again?"
Yeah.
You know, but I think it's made in the States. I'm not sure. I think it's below the border.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
and it's mostly for internet use.
Yeah.
But you know, why not? That's entertainment, folks. That's you know, that's the business. And I wish them the best of luck. You know, we had a bad thing happen to us in the first season, and that was that Caillou, being a new entity, some of the writing made him look like a crybaby and a whiner.
Yeah.
Parents had a problem with that.
Yeah,
So,
especially the
circus.
Yeah, circus one. Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. So parents didn't like that. But
And the Caillou's bit like the episode where Rosie debuted too.
Like the one where Rosie's born.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that the memory of those episodes stayed with parents And you'd be surprised how many times that I'd be in a conversation, a group of people socializing, and somebody wants to introduce the fact that I was Caillou's dad, and they'll say, are you familiar with the cartoon Caillou? And so like a mom or something will go, oh, I hate that show. And I kind of slink away, like, and that happens a lot, probably more often than I've heard, oh, I love that show. No, you don't hear that too much about Caillou. Now, the thing that I know is that they were very aware of that after the first season. And after the first season, they shifted the writing, and there was a lot less of the whiny Caillou. There was more of an exploratory Caillou.
Yeah.
So they did make an effort to change, but the mold had been cast. And Caillou has always carried that reputation around as being a whiner and a complainer. And it's, maybe not deserved. But at the same time, we also, if you had looked at the demographics, Caillou was popular. Its most popular demographic were children between the ages of about 3 and 6. And then the demographics returned again with girls aged about 9 to 14. Now you might ask yourself, wonder why that is? Well, that's because those girls were watching the show, we believe, the theory is, to learn parenting techniques because they were now babysitting children. So as babysitters, they could watch Caillou, see how Caillou's mom and dad dealt with circumstances of a difficult situation, maybe with a whiny baby or a whiny child. And so they could learn skills that they could bring to their babysitting first, and that ultimately they'd have as a parent later in life. So I always found that to be a rewarding aspect of working on Caillou as well, that it did have educational value to at least one demographic section of the viewership who could benefit from that sort of an education.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep. So, are you still in contact with anyone from Caillou?
Well, Kai's mom, Doris, we're Facebook friends. We don't talk all that often, but otherwise, nope, not really. Most of them came from Montreal. I was in Ottawa, and I don't even remember anyone else from Ottawa. There may have been. Jonathan Konskin was in Caillou. I don't recall the role he played. He was from Ottawa. His father's a great stage actor, and I think his name is John Konskin. And but no, other than that, obviously the Caillou was always played by little girls,
right?
And so now the grandfather was played by a man named George Morris, and he was a legendary voiceover guy in Montreal. He'd been a radio announcer in Montreal. He was a big star, and he unfortunately passed away a while ago. But it was a great honor for someone like me as a I was never really a superstar radio announcer. I was a journeyman at best. But for me to have an opportunity to just meet him and hang out with him for a while was pretty cool. George Morris was his name, and he played Caillou's grandfather. Now, harkening back to your recent question about the American series and the remake, it occurred to me that first of all, that AJ would now be great to play Caillou's dad. He's now almost exactly the age I was when I was cast. And then I could do granddad, because he would say things like, "Hey, Caillou, would you like to go to the park?" That sort of thing. And I figure, well, hell, I can do that now. I can sound old. Why? I am old. So, and AJ would be just the right age to be Caillou. But alas, it wasn't to be at this point.
What about the person who took over Caillou from Jackie? Are you still in touch with her?
Actually, you know what? This is the weird thing. I met her once, but by the time she took over, we never recorded together because at first she would record her lines separately and I would record my lines separately in Montreal. And then, as I said, the last season I didn't even have to go to Montreal. So I think her last name was Boivard, Annie, I think. But I believe I only met her once. At the beginning of the first season, she had been hired, and they assembled everybody, and I met her. She seemed very nice at the time, but I really don't remember much about her, and I bet she wouldn't remember a thing about me. Now I know that the first Caillou, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but I know that she's gone on to a big career in media in Toronto.
Oh yeah, Bryn McAuley.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so she's done very, very well, even after she left Caillou the first season.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
And since I mentioned about people who that you can stay in touch with anyone who works in Caillou. And previously, we actually interviewed a couple of people that did work on Caillou, which Tim Gosley, who only did the puppeteer for Dee Dee the squirrel, just only for the puppet segments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Danny Brochu, who of course most famously voiced Buster on Arthur, did some work on Caillou, and then Holly Gautier Frankel, who
who did the voice of Dee Dee.
And the one that I met, the one that we talked about briefly when I booked you, Bruce Dinsmore.
Yeah, Bruce Dinsmore.
Yeah.
You see, most of those people I think are from the Montreal area. I was an import, and so I never stuck around very long after recording sessions. Other people were working. It wasn't, it didn't turn into a kind of a social club or any of that. I would hop in my car and head home. It was 90-minute or an hour and 40 minutes down the highway, often in the winter. So if you had a chance to get home and beat the traffic, getting out of town, I would do that. The people were very nice, though. Obviously, it was a very professional organization, and that was all very good. But I never really got to know these people. I'm sure that Bruce Dinsmore would have done a Caillou gig of some kind. He's a big, big voice in Montreal. As I said, he's a superstar, really. So there'd be him and other people who had been brought in to do a role here or there. And some of these guys were working on Arthur, of course. AJ got to know some of them a little bit when he was working on Little Lulu and Arthur as well. And my other son, Mickey, was in a movie called, oh gosh, now what was the name of that? The Last Unicorn, or Nico the Unicorn, I think it was. Have you ever heard of that? Nico the Unicorn. It was shot in the Montreal area. But so my younger son had a role in that, and he also did a little bit of work as well when he was a kid.
Nice.
But he got more into baseball. The younger boy, Mickey, he was named after Mickey Mantle, and he actually was scouted by the New York Yankees at one point. He got a letter from the Pittsburgh Pirates, and was scouted by the Blue Jays.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was very. Unfortunately, he had his eyesight. He lost the ability to really read a 95-mile-an-hour pitch. You can't read a 95-mile-an-hour pitch. You're never going to play in the majors.
No.
Right.
Yeah. Also, since you mentioned sports during the interview, I forgot to tell you back. But since you said that your grandfather played soccer.
Yeah, my father he didn't play professionally. He played, but even industrial league level soccer player in Britain, playing soccer with a bunch of amateurs in Canada, he could make them look pretty foolish on the soccer pitch. And
my dad is also used to play soccer during high school and all that. So
in Britain.
No, around like I said before me.
I see.
I live in Maryland as well, so
I had an opportunity to play soccer. I would have made the team for sure, but I had to make a choice between soccer practice or driver's education. And since my family lived 8 miles outside of the town, and I was 16, and I wanted to be able to drive into town, borrow my dad's car once in a while, I opted to get the driver's license instead of play for the soccer team. My best friend joined the soccer team, and he had a great time. He lived in the town, and he was from Britain. He had lived in Britain for 10 years, And he wasn't from Britain. He was born in Canada, but he lived there for 10 years. And he went on to play for the high school soccer team and had a great time. But I never did. I had gone out as a place kicker for the football team, and but the football coach was also my phys ed coach. And while we were playing touch football in our phys ed class, and I knew that he had a really bad sunburn and he had the ball. And I touched him just a little bit too hard on the back. Well, actually, I intentionally slapped his back. And so when I went out, everybody knew I could kick field goals, and I had great length and depth and all that. So I went out to the football tryouts, strutted out onto the field. His name was Brian May, the teacher. So I strutted out onto the field and I said, "Hey, coach, what position should I try out for?" Wink, wink. Everybody knows I'm going to be the kicker. And he looked at me and said, "Volleyball." So I left the field with my tail between my legs, and that was the end of my football career.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Me and my twin brother all do both of us play soccer as well. So yeah.
It's a great sport for staying in shape.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love soccer. I don't know if you can see it. I'll try to get my
New York Yankees
up there, the top
baseball
corner. You'll see a bunch of drawings of soccer players all across the top.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Mickey Mantle.
Yeah,
there.
I saw
That's
that.
cool.
So next to Mickey
wow.
Mantle.
Oh wow, you have like a picture of Boris too.
Oh yeah, I see
that was actually done by a friend of mine, an artist friend of mine.
Wow,
that's really good.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Awesome.
That's over on that side, eh?
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I do watch a little bit of professional soccer, but playing is just more fun.
Well,
to be honest.
That picture was done by an artist friend of mine, and if I had it closer, you could see. I don't know if I can get it closer now. My cable's too short there, but she has Boris sitting in a replica location of. Geez, I can make everybody seasick there for a second.
No worries.
She placed Boris in my studio. There's my microphone is there. All of the artwork that was behind me at the time in my old studio in Ottawa is there.
Wow.
So instead of putting me in there, she put Boris in my chair, which was kind of cool. Except
Boris is Boris.
Right.
Yeah. So it's one of my favorite souvenirs of the experience.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So aside from Caillou, some of your on-camera acting TV roles include the series The Mystery Files of Shelby and Misguided Angels. What were those shows like?
Well, Misguided Angels was a one-season-long comedy, a situation comedy, about two angels inappropriately sent to heaven who are sent back to Earth to do good deeds and try to earn their wings. And it's set in a trailer park. The lead actor is Kevin Farley, and that's Chris Farley's younger brother.
That's right, yeah.
I had no idea. My first day on the set, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, you sure look a lot like Chris Farley. Did anyone ever tell you that?" And he looked at me and said, "He's my brother." Like, everybody says that, Brother. So my role, I played Angel Art. So I was in the heaven scenes, and I was an angel, and I was described as I don't know if any of you ever watched Seinfeld.
Yeah.
But there's a character in Seinfeld called Newman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was the Newman of the angels. So I was the guy always pointing out the rules and that sort of thing. So it was a fun role. At the same time I was shooting that, my son AJ was in Big Wolf on Campus, and he had a recurring role on that. And they were shot in the same location in a big sound stage area that was divided into two, one for the Misguided Angels and the other for Big Wolf on Campus. And there was actually a time when we would be both working at the same time, and it was in Montreal. So we had to drive there from Ottawa, about 90 minutes. And so there I was in my show on one side, and he was in his show on the other side. And I'll tell you, as a parent, that is pretty cool. You know,
Definitely.
Yeah,
so Misguided Angels
sure.
lasted one season, and it was okay. What was the other one you mentioned?
Mystery Files of Shelby Woo.
Now that was shot in Montreal also, and I had a speaking role in one episode, I think maybe two, but I had to play the tuba in a scene in a train where all of the guys who played the tuba were massively large, obese men, and so you can imagine the comedic slapstick of moving four big tuba guys, named the Tuba Four, through a train car in a mystery that was set on a train. And it was kind of fun, although I believe that was the time that one of the actresses, nobody of note, while I was waiting, was wondering, why do they hire actors from Ottawa to be in shows in Montreal? And I think she resented the fact that I'd come from Ottawa to be in this film, but I guess that's just professional jealousy, maybe. I don't know. But that it was okay. The lead actor was pretty good in that, and it was funny. The sweet blonde heroine-like girl off the set, smoking like a sailor, the really real actress. That's true of Ernie Coombs, Mr. Dress Up too. This is a funny thing, because I did actually get to Mr. Dress Up's his shoot in Toronto, to his studio. This is the guy from that show in Lethbridge that said, if you're ever in Toronto, look me up. Then I left Lethbridge and went to Toronto. I did look him up. He introduced me as this guy who wants to get into children's programming. And then, of course, several years later, I'm in Caillou. And in fact, I was in children's programming. But they've never made Friendly Giant, so I've never had a chance to do that since that show.
Definitely.
So you mentioned earlier you had done some film work. Are there any films that stick out to you as your favorites that you've appeared in?
Well, there was an independent film called September Runs Red that I played this autistic man, actually a doctor portraying an autistic man within the plot. That was fun to do. I was in this Punisher Warzone, in which I got eviscerated, and that was a lot of fun. That was a really interesting shoot. I was in Stardom, and the first movie I was in was actually a French language film called Le Dernier Souffle, and that means the last breath, if you translate it. So in that particular one, I had to play a Southern, part of it is set in Arkansas. And the detective from Montreal, played by a local heartthrob by the name of Luc Picard, his character has to go to Arkansas to look for evidence of a murder. And he wants to rent a room in a motel. Now, I was invited to come up and audition for the part of a cop, like a redneck cop. Actually, that's how they described him. And so I had one line that I had to learn in order to do that. And the line was, "Hey, Sarge, over here." I still remember it. Anyway, so I drove to Montreal to the audition. I was dressed in all blue. I got lost, but I managed to get to the audition in time. And I thought, how am I going to get noticed by these guys? So, the competition to get a part with 4 words or 5 words is pretty high. So I went in and I told them a story about getting lost. Now, you have our largely French-speaking people, and who are at the audition, and they're bilingual. So I walked in and gave them my best Southern accent, and it sort of went, "Well, I got to tell you, when I was on my way over here, I took a wrong turn on the auto route, took me all the way across this bridge, and I'm driving over there. I didn't know where I was, but I managed to get over here in time." And they started to laugh. They were slapping their knees. So then I left, and then they called my agent a couple of days later and said, "Listen, we want Pat to play a motel owner. The original idea was for someone else, but we've expanded the role." And so that was that. So I went up there. It was my first day on the set, on any set that I'd been on of a movie. And of course, my agent had said, eyes and ears open, mouth shut, make sure you don't screw up. And so I was there doing that. And the director, Richard Chipko was his name, he started to pace around the scene. He was looking very concerned. And I'm doing my thing. I'm behind the counter and, not doing anything, just watching, waiting for the next instruction. And the director's walking around, pacing, is going, I don't know how to end this scene. I don't like the way it's written. I don't know what to do. Oh man, I can't think of it. Well, of course, I'm a writer. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, do I say anything? Or if I say something, am I, what is this going to ruin my career on my first day? Am I going to blow it completely? Or should I say what I'm thinking? So I thought, the heck with it. I'm going to tell him. So I said, I have an idea. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Really? What's your idea?" So I told him, "It's in the movie." He used it. And so, and that little scene is in my demo that's on my website, patfry.com.
Yeah.
So that was my announcer voice. So I actually wrote the little scene that I put there. Now, the next movie I was in was called Stardom. And it was pretty cool because it was a movie that was directed by this Academy Award-winning director. And they actually shot it in my hometown of Cornwall by pure coincidence. And I played a kind of a TV host, a small town TV host, interviewing, sort of social events. And in this particular scene, I was supposed to be interviewing a cameraman who had discovered this beautiful model. And again, the director starts to pace around the scene and he's going, I'm not happy with that line that he's saying. It just doesn't seem to work. I don't know what to say. Now, this is my second movie. And I'm sitting there. This is an Academy Award-winning director. And I thought, well, do I or don't I? Oh, it worked last time. So I said, I have an idea. And he said, so what's your idea? And I told him, and it's in the movie. He used it. So I was 2 for 2 right away with these
my
guys.
gosh.
And, that's, I think, pretty impressive. It's certainly memorable, to do that right in your own hometown. And then the beauty of the thing was when I finally got around to doing my part, have any of you ever heard of a comic actor by the name of Bob Newhart?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
He used to be in the Bob Newhart show, and there was the psychiatrist one. Anyway, they used to call it the button-down humor of Bob Newhart. And so as a host of the TV show, I decided to channel Bob Newhart. Because I figured, well, I don't look like Bob Newhart. Nobody's going to know that's what I'm doing. I'll just be Bob Newhart. How could I fail? And so I'm interviewing these guys, and I'm doing the whole sort of Bob Newhart thing. Twice they had to cut because the crew was laughing so hard at what I was doing.
Oh,
2 cuts to compose themselves, including the director. It was very cool, to do that twice, right in my own hometown, right on Main Street. It was right on Pitt Street in Cornwall.
wow.
It was in a storefront, but it was still there. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Those were, I suppose, 2 of my best movie experiences.
Nice.
The first movie line that I ever had, though, was, "Yes, Your Honor, we find the defendant not guilty. Thank you. Thank you very much. Send me a check." That was it.
Yeah.
You wait around for 8 or 10 hours until they call you to the set.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then and then you get out, you say your one line, it's okay, you're God.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
All
I've
right,
done
all right, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done quite a few background roles, where just, because it pays very well if you're in the union.
Mhm.
You can get paid $200 or $300 a day just for standing around eating the food from the craft table, and
Wow.
I had one scene in a movie as an extra where they placed me, honest to God, behind a pillar. Absolutely couldn't be seen. I'm thinking, am I that bad, really? What's the point of that? But it was my wife and I used to do that together. We would make kind of like a date, so if we would be on the same set, we wouldn't necessarily sit together. There was a movie recently, a few years back, it was about miniaturizing people. What's his name? He played on Mars. He's from the Boston area. Matt Damon. Matt
okay.
Damon was in a movie.
Okay.
What about getting small or shrinking people down? Do you remember that? It was just about 5 or 6 years ago. It came out 5 years
I
ago.
don't think so.
You don't remember that one? So there's a scene in a bar. Matt Damon is in the bar, and everybody's watching this report on television about the ability of scientists now to shrink people down to a tiny, tiny size. And so the director is giving me instructions. He sits me right in the front row. And so the director comes up to me and he says, so yeah, you're going to sit here, from Cheers. You're Norm. You're Norm. And this is the only thing Matt Damon said to me. He leaned in. He goes, yeah, you're Norm. That's all I remember.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're Norm. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Everybody knows my name.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow. So Garcia, with voiceover, you also done some radio work. How did radio come into play for you?
Well, I was 17 and it was summertime.
Wow.
My dad happened
I was
to
17
know,
last year, so
no, it was the summer of 74. And I was just hanging around the house, not doing much of anything. And my dad knew the owner of the radio station in Cornwall, and and he asked him he knew that I wanted to be a radio announcer. So he asked the owner of the radio station if there might be anything there. And the owner of the radio station arranged it so that if I was willing to work overnights reading the news, for the overnight radio announcer who hated reading the news, the overnight radio announcer would teach me how to be a disc jockey. In exchange for that, no pay. It was an internship. So if I was willing to spend my overnights all summer long reading the news and being there every night, they would teach me. So by September, I had 2 shifts overnight. I was doing the overnight Friday and Saturday night shows. And within a couple of months, I had a full-time job overnight. Within about 6 months, I was doing evenings. Another 6 months later, I was a midday host and backup morning man. And so I did that I was in radio for about 10, 12 years. Moved across Canada. I worked in Western Canada. And on the West Coast in a town called Kitimat, also in a town called Prince Rupert. I worked in Lethbridge, Alberta. I worked in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I worked in Toronto, and I worked in Ottawa. So I've been all over the country, and a lot of that is in this book I've written, actually, traveling everywhere doing radio. But my favorite job was making commercials. I like doing that more than anything.
Nice.
Yeah,
awesome.
doing character voices and
Yeah,
also doing the straight sell stuff too.
Nice. Nice. So
awesome.
so overall, what do you enjoy most about working in the acting field?
I think it's the opportunity to play You know, I enjoyed playing as a child, and that's really all that acting is just playing. It's, you know, role playing. You take a role. And now serious actors, you know, Meryl Streep will put all kinds of layers and technique and stuff like that on there. But I've never been that level of an actor. You know, I have character roles and little things that I can pretty much do with my hands tied behind my back because I don't really have that much training. I have, you know, the residue of a very creative childhood, you know, left over. So to me, that's the best thing about acting is the fun. It's being able to play and to create something and contribute, you know, to that with other people that are like-minded. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yes,
Definitely.
for sure.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about your work in the past. Can you share any projects you're working on now?
Well, the last few years, my main work has been e-learning audio. I started off doing the voiceover
Oh yeah,
myself.
and the book you're doing as well.
Well, I wrote the book. That was something to keep me occupied during COVID, you know. But with the so I opened a company in 1999. It's federally incorporated. It's called webvoicer.com. And through that company, I produce audio products mostly for e-learning. And in that, either I or people that I hire or contract will do the narration. And then I produce it and send the files to high-tech companies or educating companies who are putting together e-learning courses, which they then sell to people who need those courses. And right now, I'm working on a large project for a company in Newfoundland, which I'm not voicing, but a lady in Kitchener, Ontario, who is a news reporter. She records that at her house and sends me the audio. Then I post-produce it and prepare it and send it to the client in Newfoundland, and they integrate it into their e-learning courses. At the same time, I'm working for a company out of Toronto on another project, which has already been done in English using a presenter and then 2 character role players in English, and they needed to have a French version. So I located the French talents. One of them is in Montreal, one of them is in Gatineau or Ottawa, and the third one is in Toronto, and they're all French speaking, and they're recording their parts at their houses and their home studios. They're going to send them to me. Then again, I do the post-production and final preparation, and I'll send it to that client, which is in this case based in Toronto. Nice. So that's basically what I do now for the most part. I don't do a lot of voiceover work myself. I'm sort of out of style, and not necessarily because of the age, but my most recent voice job was a public service announcement for the Ottawa Cancer Foundation, which I was very proud to do. And I thought it was some of the best work I've ever done. And that was only last fall, last autumn. But no, I'm 67 years old now, you know, and so I've had plenty of time and I've done plenty of work, and I suspect I'll have plenty more to do.
But you know, there's also things, you know, that you just want to move on doing other things too, you know.
Sure. Well, you know, if somebody actually manages to turn my book into a TV series, God knows what that's going to.
That'll be something.
I mean, it will be, but you know what? I've had enough near misses in life to, you know, to not put too much stock in it. I'll believe it when I see it. I haven't told you about, when I was working in Halifax, I created a board game. And it was very, very well received. The owners of the radio chain, the Chum chain they were called at the time, they had the Canadian version of what was MTV, and it was called Much Music. And so I invented a board game all about being a rock star. So you, as you play it, you're a rock star, and it takes you through your whole career in a competition with other people. The people who owned Much Music liked it a lot. They said they might like it to be the Much Music board game. Now, you can imagine what that would do for my career had that worked out. It didn't. They decided to go with fashion instead. So we took a shot at MTV, New York City. They said, come on down, show us your prototype. And we took it, we flew down to New York, showed it to the guy. He said, yeah, this is great. This is, we've seen lots of rock board games, but this one is absolutely the best. Here's what we're going to do. Here's some art pieces. He gave us some art to work with. He said, go back, get your packaging redesigned with our MTV logo on it. Finish up the last little things that you have to do and come back and we'll take another look at it and put something together. So I'm walking out of there from MTV in New York City going, holy man, I could have the MTV board game. That's way better than the Much Music board game. So I got my artist. His name was Jacques Levesque, and he lived in Hull, Quebec. And I'll never forget his name because Jacques Levesque is from Hull, Quebec. So Jacques gets the artwork all done up beautifully and everything. And so everything's ready. I call MTV and I ask for the guy. And they say, he doesn't work here anymore. And then I told them why I was calling. They said, no, nobody here is interested in a board game. And that was it. I hung up the phone and went, what? Oh, no. So, when you have a close one like that, so move forward to about 10 years ago, and I presented another game invention to a game company. And within 6 minutes of seeing it, they wanted to know how much I wanted for it. And we ended up making an agreement, a small contract, a beginner contract. They gave me money up front, a little pile of money. And they went off to produce it. They produced a prototype. And then after it was supposed to be on the market in the year 2014, and had it been, I'd be wealthy now. But they gave up on it for some reason or other. Mm-hmm. So I missed again. But after a while, you kind of realize, what, this wasn't meant to be. And the truth of it is, if I had been a person who had less in my life than I've had, I could see possibly, being disappointed. But, the truth is that my life has been wall to wall blessed. From the time, I suppose I was born, my wife and I are still best friends. We get along great. We do so much things together. It's just terrific. I have two great sons. They have great mates. We live in Niagara Falls, Ontario, one of the best places in Canada to live. Oh my gosh. I open my window, I can hear the falls.
Oh, wow.
We moved down here 7 years ago. Touch wood, I've had good health. I've lost about 100 pounds in the last year, which has really changed my life in another way, Wow. So life has just been really, really good to me, and I have not got the right to complain. And besides, I still haven't even touched the money they gave me when they made the contract about that second game. It's just sitting in the account. I'm thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to use that money yet. So it's not that I'm rich. I'm not, wealthy. I'm not a wealthy person, but I just have a life that I cannot complain about. All I got to do is spend 30 seconds thinking about other people on this planet who do not have anywhere near the lives that we have. And if you narrow it down even further, there are even people on this continent who do not have the life that we have. And there are people in this country who do not have the lives that we have. And there are people in this city who do not have the lives that we have. I have no right to complain or to consider that I have lived anything less than an inspired and privileged life. And that's all there is to it. And so I'm basically, a happy, fulfilled guy and full of blessings, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having said that, I would say that I'm not a religious man. But I'll tell you this is a beautifully inspirational story. Yeah, I was sitting watching the younger son, the athlete, play basketball. He was playing for the highly competitive team in the Ottawa area at the time. He was also an amazing basketball player as well as a baseball player. And I was sitting next to another couple of parents, and our sons, their son and our son were out on the court playing, and they were buddies. And I leaned over to the man. His name was Winston Cumberbatch. I said, "Oh, Winston, aren't we lucky to be sitting here watching our kids like this?" And Winston leaned into me and he said, "Patrick, you shouldn't say lucky. You should say you are blessed." And I thought, that stayed with me. I got thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm going, yeah, it's an amazing way to look at life. It's one thing to say you're lucky, but it's really something if you can say you're blessed and mean it. I don't know who's blessing me, but I'll accept it, and I'm thankful for it. I'm a blessed person.
Your blessing can mean like anything.
Yeah.
Yep. As long as you're, think so like positive about something that's happened in your life, that that you're gonna be, blessed. You're blessed. Forever or cherished or something.
I have family blessings. I've had opportunity blessings. I've had travel blessings. I've had career blessings. I mean, there's just so many.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Honestly, I feel like you have a blessing life that you have.
Yeah.
Yep. It is.
That's what matters most.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, I feel like I've been blessed to spend some time with you guys.
Thank you.
Us too.
Thank you.
We
appreciate it
too.
Yes.
Us too.
So we have like few questions left before we.
Yeah, we're close to wrapping up.
Yeah.
Fire away. I'll have another swig.
Okay.
No worries.
It's tea.
Yeah.
Imagine be like, "Oh, are you drinking wine or something?" Like,
you know what?
No,
The Niagara region is known as Canada's wine region, and I do not like wine. Not since that bad Friday night when I was 17. I'm sorry. I can't drink it anymore.
Yeah.
Fire away.
Yeah. So, as an actor, what are some of the biggest challenges you say that you faced during your career?
I think what? This is going to sound really basic, but it's learning your lines, and making sure that you know them, and you don't blow it. And so
what happens if you like? Because what happens if you like? Oh, dang! I messed it up. I had to keep on doing the whole thing all over again.
If you've ever been on a movie set, you get an idea of how many people are working there, and the power of a director, and all of the people. Now, when I was doing Misguided Angels, we were shooting a scene one day, and I was in an angel outfit, so I must have been blessed that day. And I had wings and everything. It was pretty cool. So we're doing our scene, and all of a sudden we hear bang, bang, bang from off in the distance. Director yells, "Cut! Who is that? Tell that person to stop hammering." Like, okay, that's fine. So we're back into it. All right, get set, everybody. And, it takes a couple of minutes for everything to get set up again. All right, action. We're in again. I'm at a chalkboard giving some information to the angels. And it's, talking away, and all of a sudden, bang, 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 bang. Cut. The director says, "Find that guy, fire him, and get him off my set." So we're standing around as they're getting things organized, and they actually perp walked him through the set so we could all see him being taken away and taken off the set, and he was gone.
Wow.
And that was pretty cool. That was the same day as I was driving up from Ottawa to Montreal, and I went over an overpass. It was a winter day, and all of a sudden the right window, the passenger side front window of my car, imploded. I honest to God thought Arnold Schwarzenegger was swinging in feet first from a rope into my car. And I left my car at the parking lot of the movie set. I told them, I said, "I got to drive back all the way to Ottawa. And my window is smashed." Anyway, spent the day on the set, went back out to my car, and it had been completely sealed off with plastic and taped up and totally secured. I didn't ask them to do it. Nothing. They just did it. That's the power of a professional set. So when you're on that set, you better be prepared. You better know your lines. You better know what you're doing, because really in the larger scheme of things, almost anybody could do the kind of parts that I get. I'm certainly, even though I work for a couple of Academy Award winning directors, I'm a long way from an Academy Award myself. That's never going to happen.
Oh my gosh.
Not my thing. I do it for the fun of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, and like what you say, some industry, like you have to be kind of like be like, all right, you can do only one take and that's it. You cannot retake or something like that.
That's right.
Like, yeah. So like what you say, you have to be prepared for something.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're going to be part of like a professional business like that.
Yeah. Well, in my life, I developed a philosophy of business, which I call the 3 Bs, and they are be there, be good, and be thankful. And it's basically, you have to be there totally in the moment. Make sure you're aware of what's going on. You are there. You're part of it. You're doing what you're asked to do. You're doing it the best you can. That's the be good part. So you be there, you be good. And then when you're done, you be thankful and you let the people know how appreciative you are, because many of the jobs I've gotten in the industry, there are, dozens of other people who would have loved to have that opportunity. And they didn't get it. I did. So I better be thankful that I was the one who was chosen for that job that day. So be there, be good, be thankful. That's my 3 Bs of business.
Yes.
Definitely.
I think those are great.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So now for any up and coming actors, what piece of advice would you give to anyone who wants to get into that field?
Well, if you've already realized that this is what you want to do and you love it, decide what level of acting that you want to get to, and then chart a course and stick with it. If you believe in it, that's what you're going to do. Now, in my case, I never believed that I was going to be the next Marlon Brando. I was thinking more along the lines, maybe John Candy. So I never really studied a lot about acting. I just relied on what for me was natural instinct. But if you really want to be an actor, I think that you should study it and commit to that. Open yourself up to the experience, and understand that the performance that you're giving is the character, it's not you. And because one of the things that restricts people's ability is, I think, a certain degree of shyness or intimidation at exposing themselves. True acting is all about exposing yourself. And I don't mean in the prurient way. I mean, emotionally. For example, if you've got to play a very outraged person, you need to look inward, find your own rage and how you handle that rage, and then wield it appropriately. Well, not everybody wants to expose those kinds of things. But if you're truly going to be an actor, you have to decide the type of actor you're going to be, and then prepare yourself for, bringing the truth to your work. So that's, to me, that would be the thing you have to do, is understand that you've got to bring truth. You've got to expose yourself. And sometimes that may be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice.
Yeah, I had to play a gay man once, and at first I was a little bit reticent, and but I thought, it's acting. I'm acting. In fact, he's in the demo on my website. He's wearing a black leather jacket and a cap, and it was okay. I put it in my demo. It's there. It's acting. You're creating art. It isn't you. It's what you can do.
Yeah, because you're not like the character, it's a character doing the character, and that's the way you did, for Boris and other things too.
Sure. Well, if Patrick Stewart can play a gay man, why couldn't I?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So now, turning the tables, what's the best piece of advice you'd say you've received as an actor?
Well, let me just think on that one for a minute. Well, I think it's probably that. It's probably to be prepared, to be there in the moment, and
Yeah.
to be prepared to know what you want to do and to be open-minded to doing that. There was one day doing Caillou where the director, I just couldn't get the line right. And she, I had to do, it was like 10, 12 takes. And I was getting embarrassed because usually I got it in 2, maybe 3 takes. And after about 10 or 12 takes, she said, I give up. You're not going to get it. And she moved on. I remember that moment more than almost any other one in the entire time that I've recorded. I mean, I remember generally the fun and the joy of being there, but I remember specifically that moment when maybe I wasn't as ready as I could have been. So, you have to be in the moment and be prepared and be ready. And there are a lot of people who are relying on your success.
Yeah. Great advice as well.
Definitely.
So, are there any words would you like to say to those who are watching or listening who have support your work and of Caillou over the years?
Well, the first one, just immediately, I'd want to say thank you very much. For
our pleasure.
being a viewer, a watcher. I hope they enjoyed it. I hope it brought them some value in their lives, even if it was just for the moments that they were watching it. I hope they feel that it was a positive part of their lives to do that. And so that's about it, I guess. Really, thank you very much for being there to validate what I did.
Awesome. Yes, our pleasure.
Yes. So as we're kind of wrapping this up, if people would like to connect with you, where can people find you?
Well, my website, patfry.com. And you can look at my material there. I think there's probably an email link from there if you wanted to do that. I'm on Facebook, but I don't know that I think it's it's not open to everybody to get in there. But that's it. And come to Niagara Falls. I mean, it's a good place to be if you want to have a vacation.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And your website will be in the description down below, so people can check out your website and things you've done and everything.
Yeah. Webvoicer.com is my professional one, but that's really there's not much there, character wise or anything.
Okay. If you want to, we can put that website too.
Yeah. Webvoicer.com.
Why not?
Yeah.
But, the book, I don't know. I'd like to see maybe in a year. It might take a while to come out. I don't know whether I'm going to be I'm going to publish it, self-publish it. Obviously, having somebody seeking a TV deal could really help getting a publishing deal for the book. And so there's that to look forward to maybe in the future.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Definitely. So now to wrap this up, this last question we asked to all of our guests at the end, which Matt is going to take us out with.
With pleasure. So, of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? Or how would you define the word nostalgia?
Oh, I think it's the joy you get from your favorite memories, and also from the clues that take you there as they're represented by such things as, let's say, a Beverly Hillbillies lunchbox might remind you of that TV show, or a Dukes of Hazzard Matchbox toy or Hot Wheel car might remind you of that if you're into that. I think that my father used to teach me mathematics using our kitchen clock in the mornings while we were preparing to go to school. He'd ask me questions based on the numbers. And I remembered that kitchen clock. And just after we moved to Niagara Falls 7 years ago, we were in an antique store and I saw the very same clock, not the actual one, but the same model of clock that my father had taught me when I was 7, 8 years old, or 6 or 7, when he would quiz me on math. So of course I bought it. That is nostalgia to me. It's in my sunroom at the back. I actually had to put the hour ahead on it yesterday. I had it right in my hands. And of course, I thought of my dad and those mornings in the kitchen out on the farm. And that's what nostalgia is to me. It's when you can touch a positive memory from your past or be reminded of it in some way, musically, visually.
Yeah,
definitely. I think that's a great note
great
to end on.
words.
Well, Pat, thank you so much for being a guest. This was a blast.
Yes, thank you so
It's
much.
honored to be asked.
Thank you so much, Pat. And
Yes,
like what I always say, thank you so much for being
being a
part
part of our
the show.
childhoods.
Yes, that's what I'm about to say, Chris. and
Nice.
and thank you for you done being a part of childhoods. And keep up the great work and see what's next for you.
All right.
Yeah, and Boris, do you have any last words?
This has been great fun, guys. I only wish Caillou could have been here, but you know him. He likes the playground.
Yes, and thank you. I'm glad you have. I'm glad you have a blessing time with us, and
Yes.
you too as well. And hope you have a blessing day.
Yeah, you too.
Yes, and to all of our viewers and listeners, this brings another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show to a close. We've absolutely enjoyed our time with Pat Fry.
Yes, thank you very much, Pat. We appreciate it. It's an honor.
And from all of us to all of you, remember to keep nostalgia alive, and we'll see you next
nostalgia
time
alive, and see you
with
next
more
time
fun
for more-
interviews.
Yes, take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you, nostalgia.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.